Hello, in this video we are going to discuss VM migration and live migration on SEAPATH. For this we'll do basically three use cases. The first use case is just voluntarily moving a VM from one host to another. Let's look at what we have here. So on this cluster with three hosts, Elabo 1, 2 and 3, we are going to work on two guests. One is called Debian1, one is called Debian2. Both are running on Elabo 2 and they have a preference to run on Elabo 2. This is something you can configure using CRM. So directly the pacemaker configuration by creating location constraints. Here we can see that Debian1 has a preference to run on Virtu Elabo 2 and Debian2 has a preference to run on Virtu Elabo 2 as well. This is also something you can set in the VM object and by a metadata. So basically we can look we can look at the metadata of the VM and we can see that those VMs have what they call a preferred host, and this will tell what host they'd rather run on. So right now we have two VMs running on the second node of our cluster. Let's check that again. And assuming we want to balance the cluster a bit more, for instance, let's say we want to move Debian2 from the second node to the first node, for instance. So we're going to connect also to the third node. So let's connect to the third node. Right now the third node has no VM running on it. Let's check. Right. And we are going to ask Pacemaker to move the resource Debian2 to this node. And in the meantime, so we can run this command basically anywhere on the cluster, but in the meantime we're going to watch what's happening on the cluster. So we can see that Debian2 is running on Elabo 2 and we are going to ask to move it to Elabo 3. So we see that the VM is migrating. It's going to take a few seconds because it's live migrating. The VM is still answering to ping. Debian1 is running is running a ping on Debian2, and we can see that it's still pinging. And the VM has moved to Elabo 3. Let's check. Yeah, it's running now. Let's say we want to move it back. So the VM is still there. Let's connect to it. You can see the uptime. Yeah, it's been up for 1 day. It hasn't restarted. It hasn't rebooted, and it's still accessible from the network. Now let's move it back to Elabo 2. Once again, we can see the VM is migrating. You can see we can still working on the VM. We can still work on the VM, and the RAM is the memory of the VM is copied, is transferred from one host to another. Up there it is. So now the VM is running on Elabo 2. It's still there. The uptime has not changed. It still answers to ping, and the VM is not running on Elabo 3 anymore. So this is the first use case you may have. It's to move voluntarily one VM from one host to another. Usually on a production basis, you will create a constraint and let the cluster deal with balancing. Second use case, let's say we want to restart, for instance, this host, or we want to do some maintenance on it. So we want to move all the VMs out of this node. I'm going to say, okay, this node is going to be down for maintenance, so we want to move all the VMs. So there is a pretty handy command in Pacemaker, which is to use the CRM node and command, and to put the node in standby mode. So let's say we want to standby the node Elabo 2, and pacemaker will put the node in standby mode and move all the resources running on this node elsewhere. So what we may have here is one VM migrating to Virtual Labo 1 and the other VM migrating to Virtual Labo 3, the cluster always trying to balance resources. So let's see, okay, so this one is going to, as I said, Debian 1 has moved to eLabo 1, Debian 2 has moved to eLabo 3. Of course, you may set a secondary constraint to have whatever you like in the configuration. Since I didn't say anything, the cluster had to make a choice, and it chose to move the VM there. Once again, the VM has not restarted. We can always work on it. It's still answering to network queries. So everything is fine. And the thing is, once I'm done with doing my maintenance on this node, I can move it back to online mode by this command, crm node online and virtu eLabo 2. And that way, the eLabo 2 node is back in the cluster, and it's recovering from the standard configuration. That means running Debian 1 and Debian 2. So the VMs are once again migrating from Debian 1 to Debian 2. So once again, we can work on it, answer the ping. Let's wait for the migration to finish. There. So, uptime. And the last use case, so this is basically a planned maintenance, so no big problem. You can work with the different nodes, run VMs, and lower your downtime. But you may ask what happens if a node fails. So in that case, the VMs won't be able to live migrate, because live migration requires the memory to be transferred. So if the node is completely down, it won't happen. But what will happen is that the cluster will detect the VM can't be run on a failed node, and they will restart them from scratch again on another node. So we may have some downtime, but still the VM will restart in a timely manner. So for that we're gonna crash Virtual Labo 2. I'm gonna crash it and see how the cluster deals with that. So basically, of course, we won't be able to connect. Those windows won't help, because both VMs will crash, but they will restart in a timely manner. Let's see. So to crash the server, so let's first sync to disk to limit the problems, and then we crash really hard the server. So this is the hardest way you can crash a server, I think. So now we see the node has been detected as offline, and so the guests are restarting on a different node. So of course we have lost connection. The guests have been completely failed, disconnected and everything. But once they have restarted, so in a few seconds, we'll be able to connect back to them again. So this is to show the resilience SEAPATH can bring to an application. In case the host fails, in a few seconds, the node will be restarted on another node. Linux is booting, but yeah. Yeah, there it is. So the uptime, of course, is 0 minutes. And same thing for the second VM. It should be back. And we should be able to ping it. Network is up. everything is back. To end this presentation, I'd like to wait a few minutes for the... this command will reboot the node very hard. And in a few minutes, the node will be back again. We should see it appear in the online list. And then after a few seconds, the cluster will decide to recover to its standard situation, which is having Debian 1 and Debian 2 running on the Virtual Labo 2. So we're going to wait a bit for that. So we see the node is online now. So we can connect to it. And look at this status. It should change after a few seconds when the cluster decides the node is completely fine and that it can run Debian 1 and Debian 2 again as configured. We're going to connect to them, have one ping the other, and there they are. They are migrating from the third node and the first node back to Labo 2. So we should see them coming there. They're paused right now. They're migrating and they're back to their original node. And once again, no interruption. I hope this explains how SEAPATH deals with VM migration and VM resilience. Thank you.